Good afternoon. First off, I want to say a huge thank you for all of you in this room. It's a Friday afternoon. It has been a packed 3 days with very interesting and enlightening conversations. You are all dedicated ones to sticking out until the last day and the last panel in the afternoon. Before we get started, you might notice there are a few copies of the Science Policy magazine left on the table. We request all of you to pick them up. Please feel free to grab a copy, and it makes excellent reading on your way home. For our final plenary, we have saved the most incredible conversation for the last. The session is titled From Idea to Impact, the Value of Federal Investment in Biotechnology Research, organized by the Canada Research Coordinating Committee. And now I'll invite Paul Herbert, Chair of the CRCC Committee and President of the CAHR, to introduce the panel. Thank you.
Well, I'm standing between you and leaving, I think, but it's wonderful to see all of you here who decided to stay. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. I've been to part of the sessions, and my God, there have been some great meetings, and this is just yet another one of those. Ça me fait un énorme plaisir d'être ici de la part des présidents des conseils, le CRSNG et le CRSH, ainsi que le FCI, et nos deux départements, ICED et Santé Canada. Un énorme plaisir. J'aimerais, avant de commencer, donc de saluer mes collègues et de leur part, saluer nos panélistes. C'est vraiment la 7e réunion consécutive, c'est la 7e année que nous développons ces panels ici, et ça nous fait encore un grand plaisir. J'aimerais avant tout souligner, I'd like to acknowledge the territory, that we are on the ancestral territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And for that, we thank them for being on this land and allowing us to take part in these sessions. My job today is pretty simple. It's just to start the day off. And the rest of the job is going to be to these wonderful folks that you're going to hear from. So we are a unique point in time. Vraiment, le temps est unique. We have a new government. We have other things that are happening that are transforming our world. There are neighbors to the south. There are major shifts in demographics in our country. Climate is there. Those are some of the issues that we live with of the day. But there is a lot more, and that's why we're here today. We are a unique point in time, truly a unique point in time. I just want to remind you that in the year 2000, that was the initiation of CIHR, Genome Canada, and a whole lot of investments in science, CFI as well. Well, actually, CFI a few years older than that, but let's just say for argument's sake, around that time. At that particular point in our history, 25 years ago, we were in the midst of the Human Genome Project. Why is that important? Well, we spent billions of dollars, thousands of scientists' time to sequence one genome over 13 years. Now we can do that in a weekend for maybe about $100, depending what side of the ocean you're on and what analyzer you use and what volume you have, but $100. In the UK right now, they're sequencing 50 to 80,000 a month, plus or minus, on our Future Health project. And they're linking all that data to the IHR. So they're going to be doing some amazing things. Not only that, but there's CRISPR-Cas9. And there's going to be more that you're going to hear about. But CRISPR-Cas9, we can take that genome now, and with RNA technology, we can edit the thing and cure disease, transform all kinds of, transform our genome and some pretty amazing things. So not only can we sequence the map of life, we can now edit it. And that transformation is in the short period of 25 years. That to me is amazing. It sounds long, but in the course of human history, it is dramatic. The other thing you need to realize is that we understand the immune system in ways we never did before. We can now basically develop molecules at a rate we never could before. And that is because we are now converging between that biological revolution, which I think we're in, and that's what these people here represent, and artificial intelligence. So the speed of discovery is going to be all that much faster. We are going to see an enormous upheaval in what society will be like in the coming years. We will see new devices, we will only see new cures, we will be able to predict diseases well before they occur. We will be able to evaluate our treatments in faster ways than we ever could and get them to market and commercialize them. And we will be able to precisely deliver medicines we never thought we could. And that is not that far off. And that particular piece is really important, and that's what we're going to hear a little more about today. The only thing I would like to say, well, just a few others, is the Government of Canada, through our granting councils and CFI, has decided to invest largely in that dream, in a sense, in all of it, in artificial intelligence and quantum and life sciences. So that the government of the day is starting to realize that that's the economy of the future. So that dream I just told you about, we need all of this to happen to make it real and to commercialize all of those discoveries that we want, that we come up with, those major investments. My colleague here will tell you what he thinks about all that and where it manages to succeed or fail. And I'm sure the panelists here will cover all of that. But on behalf of my colleagues, again, I am so thankful that you decided to stay. I hope you can share the dream of a wonderful future for our country where we not only are more healthy and well, but prosperous in the process through all of these forms of biotechnologies and everything that goes with it. So merci beaucoup. Je vous invite à écouter nos collègues pour le temps qui nous reste. Allez.
Thank you, Dr. Hebert. Let's make things a bit real here. I'm very happy to moderate the discussion today with this excellent panel of Canadian biotech researchers and innovators. Bien que la discussion se déroulera principalement en anglais, j'aimerais inviter tout le monde sur le panel et dans la salle à s'exprimer dans la langue officielle de leur choix, sachant qu'un service d'interprétation simultanée est disponible pour tous. Do I get my sea levels for that? No. So I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves in a moment, but I hope you don't mind if I say a few words just to set the stage. This is what you get when you invite a business reporter to host a panel like this. I think we can all agree that Canada is a great place to do science, particularly medical research. We have an abundance of world-class researchers, some of whom are in the room, who benefit greatly from our federal research funding organizations. And we'll likely bring in more brains thanks to the budget. This is a great time for Canadians to open our doors to the best and brightest globally, particularly from the United States that is defunding its vaccine readiness and public health infrastructure, making it harder for researchers to do their work and withdrawing from global health organizations. But sometimes I wonder if Canada does so much world-class research that it's just given away. I say that half jokingly. Every time I go to Toronto, I go to the Mars building attached to UHN, I see this glass display case that reads, "Insulin, Canada's gift to the world." I can't stand that display case. I feel like it should read, "Canada's gift to the economies of the United States, Denmark, and France." A century after the greatest medical discovery in Canadian soil, 2 of the 10 most valuable drug companies in the world, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, have core franchises built around insulin and treatments for conditions related to diabetes like obesity. And while we're talking about gifts, Canada gave another gift to the world in the form of discoveries by a U of T scientist into how GLP-1 works. Novo Nordisk again thanks us for our meritorious support of the Danish economy. Meanwhile, as you probably all know, Canada has 0 homegrown pharma giants. In fact, I was looking at this last night, there's a single company out of the top 500 publicly traded companies in the world that has both developed its own drugs and taken them to market in Canada. That's Aurinia Pharmaceuticals in Edmonton. Its revenues are half of 1% of Eli Lilly. Just one drug giant, though, based in Canada would have a massive impact on this country. Novo Nordisk is so big that Denmark reports its GDP with and without the company. It employs tens of thousands of people, and it's now worth more than the Royal Bank of Canada, which is our most valuable company. Meanwhile, Canada's life science sector is kind of a rounding error. It accounts for 0.7% of our GDP, 0.25% of the TSX composite, by far the smallest sector. Imagine what one Novo Nordisk could do for Canada. Now, despite its small size, our life sciences sector has delivered some big returns for the few Canadian funds that do invest. Most benefits go to foreign investors and often leave behind limited residual economic benefit. So we can pat ourselves on the back for a job well done in improving the world's health through our brilliant discoveries, but that's not enough. We need to build companies around our discoveries. We need those companies to do that here, to take the drugs to market, to become big, to do it again and again, and to keep doing it from here. That brings jobs, expertise, productivity, manufacturing know-how, economic growth, tax revenues. We need all those things in Canada. Pats on the back do not put bread on the table. So I'm hoping we can do some diagnosing and prescribing this afternoon based on that. I'm going to ask Molly to start. Molly, give us a brief introduction about who you are and why we need to hear from you today.
It's on? Okay, great. Well, hi, everybody, and hi over there, and hi over there. I was like, come closer so we can feel more like a family. Anyways, my name is Molly Scheuken. I'm a professor at the University of Toronto. I've been there since 1995. And I grew up with entrepreneurial parents. I did my post-secondary education in the Boston area. And so I often think of myself as growing up as an adult in this booming and emerging at that time and now booming biotech sector. So when I started at the University of Toronto, I actually had been working in the biotech sector and couldn't really find an exciting job, which is, I think, is part of what you were talking about, Sean. And but I was really excited about the amazing research going on at the University of Toronto, and somehow was able to get a job there, and really have had a great career there, but have been very interested in translation. And so I have started 4 companies now, and I have a 5th one sort of brewing in the lab. So very much love the translational I love basic research, and I love thinking about how we can use that basic research to make a difference to people. So maybe that's enough.
That's great. Ev?
So I'm Eve Dubé. I'm a medical anthropologist, a professor at Laval University. So I came from a very different angle. So my research is around why people accept or not technology. So we could have great innovation. And my field of research is vaccine. But if people don't accept the vaccine, then there's no point in it. So I'm a CIHR Applied Public Health Chair and also a member of the Canada's NITAG, the Canadian National Advisory Committee on Immunization, and scientific co-director of the Bridge Research Consortium. So my research is all about translating those great innovation into public acceptance and public trust.
John.
Yeah, hi, John Bell. I'm a scientist here in Ottawa at the Cancer Center. And my basic fundamental research in my lab is about developing novel therapeutics for the treatment of cancer. So I have really benefited from the government investment. It's supported my entire career through the MRC, CHR, and CFI throughout my entire career, which has been great. And I have also, like Molly, formed a few companies, because I recognized the need to actually get that to happen so you get your discoveries out to the clinic and into commercialization. Unfortunately, to Sean's point, 2 of the companies I started have now left this country and gone somewhere else. And so I really feel strongly that we need to do something to really cultivate that whole culture here in Canada, to have our discoveries developed here and anchored here so we can actually benefit from them as Canadians, not only in terms of economic benefits, but I think in terms of our own healthcare, we'd be able to actually price drugs that suit our healthcare system. And I'm also, I should just mention, the scientific director of BioCanRx, which is a originally government federal funded NCE program, which is involved in translating discoveries from the lab and into the clinic. It's an important facet that I think we need to pay more attention to.
Last but not least.
Okay, so I'm Karima Savar. I just stepped off, and I'm not allowed to use the R word, so I won't, from a venture fund, Quark Venture. I was the CEO and general partner. I've spent most of my career in the biopharmaceutical industry. I was the CEO and president of the Center for Drug Research and Development for many years. And I now sit on a bunch of boards, very interesting companies doing amazing things like Canary Medical that has the first talking devices. So you implant your knee, and from the moment you have your new knee, it's talking to your surgeon and telling him whether you're walking straight, whether you have an infection, what's your problem. Things that we didn't think were going to happen for a long time. I spent many years in big pharma, mostly in Sanofi Pasteur. And so I have the background of looking at things from a pharma perspective and from forming biotech. I've also gotten myself involved somehow in scientific policy with government. And I have to tell you that we have to address the problem we're talking about today. A big cornerstone of our economy is going to rely on the innovation component of it. And building an innovation component, cornerstone of which is going to be health biosciences. Health needs to be looked at as an investment, not as a cost. And so we'll be talking lots more about all this with Sean.
Fantastic. And we'll have time as well in about half an hour for questions. So think of some good ones. There's microphones here. I'll cue you when we're ready, and that'll be great. Okay, I'd like to ask each of you when it comes, let's just jump right into the topic. When it comes to government support of the life sciences sector broadly, what elements are working the best, and what do you think needs the most work, or what are we missing? We'll go down the alleyway again. We'll start with you, Molly.
Okay, well, I mean, for sure, I hope we won't be a broken record in terms of money, but capital does make a difference. Whether that's for the basic science or for the translation. So I think we've got a great system. First of all, it's highly trusted. You know, the peer review system is trusted, and that's critical. And so we've got a great system. And if we coupled that with more money, then I think, you know, the funding rates are so low, right? It means that doesn't mean that 90% of the ideas that we're leaving on the table are good, but I'm sure a lot of them that we're leaving on the table are good. And you know, those are the funds we need to fund our talent. So it just, you know, and everything costs so much more.
Ev, what do you think is working, and where do we need work?
Yeah, so I was lucky to have received support from a large network that really helped me in my career. I think sustained funding is key, especially I will talk about the Canadian Immunization Research Network. That's a network that was set up in the first influenza pandemic to support research from the lab to social science and acceptance, and that's kept going. So there's this researchers that are ready to go when a pandemic hit, they're able to do research rapidly. So that's investment on the long run. I'm lucky to have CBRIF funding, but that's a 4-year project. So it's important that once you've started development, to maintain those investments to make sure that we will take the most benefit out of it.
John.
Yeah, I totally agree with my two colleagues here that we do need more money in the system, and there's no question about that. However, having said that, we've done some pretty amazing things as scientists in Canada. I think it's really impressive what we do at the fundamental level. However, to your point, discovering insulin, GLP-1 inhibitors and so on, those are important discoveries, but the next part, getting them from the lab into the clinic and onto commercialization, Canada's a bit weak in that, to be honest. We need to have more of a funding capacity for translating discoveries from the bench to the bedside as it's used, but then also past that into the commercialization realm. So I think we lack a good, cohesive, consistent funding program all the way from here to there. We're doing great at one end, we're not doing so well at the other end. I think that's a big issue.
We're going to fill in.
So I'll just pick up from John, because that's exactly right. This is an ecosystem play. It's not like you have, flavor of the day. This year we're going to fund the universities and beef them up, and next year we'll give a little bit to translation, and the third year we're going to fund companies. Doesn't work like that. We need sustained support of the entire ecosystem, but funding is only one part of it. You need an enabling environment, a business environment, because government is not a bank. Government is the catalyst. They can give us catalytic funding to do that fundamental research and to, the education is, we have superb education and that gives us amazing talent, but then we have nowhere to place that talent because we haven't built companies that are anchored. We haven't got critical mass of companies that stay. And what we have become is an off-balance sheet pipeline for talent and technology and young companies for other countries. And so to address that, government needs, I shouldn't just say government, business, everybody needs to be committed. There needs to be a cultural shift to this entire ecosystem and supporting it.
Right, I'm going to start this question off to John. Our funding agencies and CFI primarily finance pre-commercial university-based research. How effectively are they supporting downstream commercialization and the capture within Canada of the economic benefits of that research? And to what extent should they be more oriented to that?
I would say it hasn't been great. I think that's been a real challenge, but I would also say there's been a real shift in attitude and we're beginning to see new things happen. So this, I think, probably catalyzed by the pandemic. There's a big investment, for instance, in biomanufacturing by the government, which is a huge beginning. But we need to continue to do that sort of thing. We need to fund more clinical studies because that's a key part of commercialization, as Karim will tell you. We need to have all that part in between discovery and commercialization. And right now, it's just beginning, and I applaud the government for starting, but we need to have more of that. And as my colleagues have all said, consistent. We can't keep changing horses halfway down the road. We have to keep a consistent funding stream in this respect.
Molly, you want to add to that?
Well, I would just add that I don't want people to leave the room thinking we should divide the little pie differently. I think we need a bigger pie, and the issue is that development costs a lot more than research, right? And I think maybe that's the root of the problem, is that we can afford to fund research, but we can't afford to fund development. And I agree, it's not, as Karima said, it's not just government, but government has a series of tools they can use to incentivize industry to spend money or to bring industry here to invest. So I think that's what we're really talking about.
Absolutely, Molly. And to create an enabling environment that's business friendly for business to come and invest. But the other thing is, if you as a country are not at the table with capital, then these technologies are going to move off. So we need more capital pool in Canada. And so one of the things we had suggested, for example, in the HBEST report, was that the pension funds, Canadian pension funds, are investing in science and tech all over the world. In US, I go to New York, I go to London, they're there investing, that a percentage of that should be allocated for investment in Canadian science and technology in companies. So we can build, and this could be for the scale-up part of it, because there's more money that's come in for the startup part, but the scale-up is a real challenge for them. And if you're not playing at the table, it's not that the Canadians would take care of all of it, but you're a big player at the table. You don't have a say.
UBC, something struck me recently, I think it was something one of you folks said. UBC is a leading institution in the field of lipid nanoparticles, which is a delivery technology used for the mRNA vaccine. Now, Canadians paid for the salaries of these university scientists who developed the LNPs and subsidized the R&D work of the spin-offs through SHRED and probably other mechanisms and that sought to commercialize the technology. But for all that, it didn't exactly get Canada to the front of the line, did it, when these vaccines, at the end of the day, were ready? So I'm just wondering, for those in the room who are devising policy for the granting agencies, should we be attaching strings to any of the government R&D funding to ensure that Canadians get a direct front of the line benefit from commercialized homegrown inventions? Who wants to take that one?
Well, it's a tough call because if you don't actually support all the way through, it's sort of hard to ask the people downstream who are putting a whole lot of money into that development to then pay back. So I understand totally the concept that was discovered here, and I think there should be some hook to some extent, I suppose, but I think people don't realize how much it takes past that first discovery. And even the things that were done at UBC, which were amazing for the whole world, but it's hard to get those hooks unless you're willing to also support more. I think if they had advanced it more in Canada, then that would be a different story. But I think if it's just at the very beginning, it's harder to do that.
Yeah, I think, and that's why I say that when you bring in money later for the scale-up part, and that there should be, some equity interest for government, and other governments are doing it. We've been really hesitant because even in the networks, we've tried to say, well, we make small investments, even if they're really small, a couple of $100,000 or whatever. There should be an opportunity for them to get money back. We want them to be sustainable, but we don't want them to have any equity and earn money back to be sustainable. So we sometimes tend to shoot ourselves in the foot. But you're absolutely right. Those policies need to be readdressed. But at the early stage, you need to allow that freedom of, open. It's the watering hole, right? You don't know what the technology is going to bring.
Karima, I've written about how Vancouver's life sciences sector seems to kind of be a lot more successful by an order or two of magnitude than other places. What's working so well in BC?
It may be that we're the other side of the Rockies and everybody's forgotten about us. But actually, I think it's, to be honest, Sean, I think we gave everybody a smack in the head at one point in time. I remember when I came, when I moved there 25 years ago, and I came to take a company public and international. When I finished doing that, a bunch of CEOs got together and came to me and said, well, you've had all this international experience and you've done public work. Can you not set up an organization that is for the sector, not an industry association, but a sector association where we can bring academia, industry, government, foundations, everybody who's playing in this space together, because it was simply an industry association prior to that. So we set up Life Sciences BC, we got things going, and we started having these partnering days where we started inviting big pharma from global and so on and so forth. In 5 years, we raised $1.5 billion for the sector. And the monies went not only into the companies, but into organizations like the Vancouver Prostate, the BC Cancer Agency, and others, all benefited. And suddenly people saw the value of let's work together and let's help each other. And since then, we've built this, there's an ethos and you could pick up the phone to any CEO and you have a problem, another CEO, they'll help you. So they've become like that through necessity. What that's done is today we have some 900 biotech and medtech companies. We have, other emerging technologies with companies, with D-Wave and other things that we do with quantum. But this was, a key factor, I think, and it's created now a culture. That's why I said, in this problem we have today, we need a shift, a cultural shift, okay? That really was game-changing.
I want to throw it to you, Molly, in a second. And certainly what you had in the early days was some successes like QLT and Angiotech. And I don't think there's another university that comes close to translating the campus research into spin-offs. Molly, you're on the board of Mars, and you're in Toronto, which really should be the Boston of Canada when it comes to biotech. And in fact, there have been ambitions going back 25, 30 years to do that. I don't see that. What's missing in Toronto? Why don't we have the kind of success that we see in Vancouver with more companies move downstream, more companies with hundreds of people into phase 3 trials, striking those deals like we do, 3 time zones away?
Well, I guess, my first point is Canada, we're a big landmass, but we're a small country. And so I hate to be, picking on Ontario versus BC. Like, let's just be Canada and let's play with on the same playing field and learn from each other. I think there's a lot of activity in Toronto, in biotech, and of course in AI. And from a Mars perspective, Mars was started focused on biotech, and then over the years it lost its focus on that. And under the new leadership, it's refocused on biotech and is trying to bring that life sciences community together. I mean, I think what we have in Toronto, and I imagine you have it in Vancouver as well, is you have all these little organizations, right? And this goal of bringing them together, bringing the country together so that we can be stronger, I think is really what we need to do as a country. So I think it's true for Mars and all the other little organizations. I can tell you at the University of Toronto, it's 100,000 people there, right? That's a big university. It's a big bureaucracy. I think the universities can be less bureaucratic, but I'm sure that's all universities, not just in Canada. But I think there's also an opportunity to bring some of these little organizations to work together so that the companies have limited resources can work more effectively. I imagine the same's in Ottawa.
Yeah, I think, part of the problem is it's a cultural thing too, in terms of the science culture. We're all measured by papers and grants and so on. And to become an entrepreneur, as Molly has done, for instance, is risky behavior. And I don't think it's really rewarded by our institutions in reality. And so that's part of the issue for sure. And I think we have to find a way to encourage young people to become entrepreneurs and use their science to help in developing companies in Canada and staying in Canada.
They're not given credit in the same way as for publishing papers as being commercializing. You need to reward for that. So, and I think that needs to be sort of inculcated into the culture, and academia needs to start bringing that in early on, and so that you are rewarded for that. But I'll just say one other thing is that things are changing. Scientists are working together from across the country. So we have a company today, we were talking about Panthera, that has the scientist at the University of Ottawa who's working with somebody from Alberta, and they built a great company together, which they've exited. So it's possible, and we need to break down these provincial barriers too, so we can do that more.
Yes, so I was lucky to have a mentor named Michel Bergeron, who's an infectious disease specialist and also an entrepreneur. And he developed a great technology, but his technology, GBS test, was never used in his own hospital. So it's not always valued to be an entrepreneur when you're a scientist. But he owns company, and I recall having a discussion with some colleagues in academia that it's not always well perceived in your own world of academia to own a company and develop your research. You're perceived as conflicted. So I think we need to grow that vision as well within scientists.
Yeah, where I've seen this, I want to come back to you in a second, where I've seen this work well, again, when I was out for my story on BC, it seems to be toned from the top. I mean, the dean of the School of Medicine, very entrepreneurial, has done his own companies, got the School of Biomedical Engineering. I think it's like you have to pour a potion in the water and it starts at the top. Ev, I want to ask you a couple of questions. You study the attitudes of citizens when it comes to issues like public trust in healthcare and vaccine skepticism. Do you think we've seen an increase or a decline in Canadian attitudes toward the healthcare system and the health sciences sector to deliver medicines that will improve their lives?
So there's definitely a huge decrease in vaccine confidence that was brought up by the pandemic. There's a specific distrust in mRNA technology. We know how wonderful is this new technology, but people are not trusting it. So if you invest that much into developing a vaccine and then people won't take it, your investment is worth nothing. So I think investing in developing technology should be met with investing in building science literacy, social acceptance, ensuring trust. And trust is not only a thing of the public that is ignorant. There's clinicians that are distrustful of some innovation. There's a policymaker that are distrustful of science. I start my career trying to debunk the myth of vaccine cause autism. Yesterday, CDC published on its website false information that vaccines are causing autism. And RFK huge backsliding in public confidence of vaccine.
From your research, is this most of this about vaccines, or is this in general about, I mean, like there's lots of new medicines that come on the market every year. Is this really focused on vaccines or the output in general of the sector?
Well, there's a thing we call the prevention paradox. So a vaccine, you get it, you never know if it's work. It has protected you. If there's something wrong that you believe is caused by the vaccine, then it's easy to think that's due to the vaccine. So it's much more easy to make people accept of a drug. If you develop a new personalized cancer treatment for someone who has a year of life expectancy, his willingness to accept anything will be much higher than to get a 30 years old healthy person to accept the vaccine against H5N1, for instance. So there's a difference there, and that's why we need to keep investing in public health goods, such as vaccine, which are harder to sell.
Right, I guess it goes hand in hand with new medications. Molly first and then Karima.
Well, I think there's been distrust in science for a really long time. I remember there would be public demonstrations against nanotechnology. Remember genetically engineered foods, people would protest against that. And so I think I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, of course, then that's what you study. It's hard, with the vaccines, you don't know what's happening. But I think there's distrust. And then also, it's like you're talking to your kid who says, their friend in the playground told them that smoking's good for them. And so then they tell that to, this is actually a true story. My son said, well, no, my friend told me smoking's good for you. And I just looked at my son and I'm like, no, this is when he's 11.
Or Zin. Zin is like that.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And so like now we have, unfortunately, leaders who are standing up. And of course that affects us in Canada.
Yeah, and I think the big problem is also that we have diminished public education in the value of science and knowledge about science and education. And I said in one of our panels, I mentioned that, we don't do those fantastic documentaries on TV that we used to, or the ads, and they said, my generation doesn't watch TV. So I said, well, whatever social media, whatever form we're going to use, but we're not doing that education, right? And look at what's happening to our country on measles. How shocking is it that this country has fallen out for, WHO standard on measles? So we actually have proof that it's preventive, that vaccines are the most preventive thing. I, of course, conflict of interest. I worked for Sanofi Pasteur for many years. I love vaccines. I'm going to wear T-shirts that say, I love vaccines, because it's the only preventive thing.
We're going to have time just to remind you all for questions in about 7 or 8 minutes. So a couple more questions before we do that. There was little in the federal budget about the life sciences sector other than this plan to bring 1,000 new people, researchers here. Meanwhile, I found it interesting that British Columbia's new industrial policy is positioning investment in lipid nanoparticles as supporting defense. Molly, maybe you start us off with this. Do you think this is the best way for life sciences to get more attention and funding, is to sort of wedge it in and position it as a way for us to meet our NATO defense spending commitments, or do we risk being sort of flavor of the day if biotech goes too much into that?
Well, I wouldn't restrict it to lipid nanoparticles, but I think we all saw the budget, and there's a lot of money going into defense. And so the question is, can we access some of that fund? We all know that the health of the nation is critical to the existence of the nation. So I don't think it's wrong to think about health as part of our national defense strategy. I wouldn't say lipid nanoparticles. I think that's a little bit too narrow, or maybe very too narrow. And in just my own personal experience, I have had funding in my lab from the U.S. Department of Defense for research that we're doing that's relevant, to people on the battlefield. And, that was for research related to blindness, so we're not making bullets, we're not making armor. And there's also DARPA, right? And so that's all defense spending. So the US spends an enormous amount of their defense budget on research, and I think we should as well.
I completely concur with you, and DARPA is a huge program that Canadians have been great beneficiaries of as well, supporting, health. Because remember, defense, it depends how you're going to define defense. So defense is not just military defense, there's got to be health defense. COVID taught us that lesson. We have to be economically viable, so you need economic security, health security, military security. And I think we have to find a way, if most of the money is gone there, we have to find a way of that connection. Again, not just lipid nanoparticles alone, but where we are world leading, where we have world leading platforms in this country, they should be supported and there should be a program, whether it's a DARPA-like program or a BARDA-like program, I don't know, that supports that.
John, Ev, if you want to add to that.
No, I was just, there's a rationale to make that health security is an important part of defense, and then LT civil society is key if you're under attack.
If we were picking areas of medical science, John, what do you see as Canada's strengths where we should be doubling down on in that sense?
Research in my lab, I guess. But
Mine too.
there's a lot of great science happening in Canada. There's no question. And this, as we talk about lipid nanoparticles and the work that Peter Cullis did in British Columbia, was brilliant stuff. Saved the world. But obviously, I'm biased. I think the cancer research community is really, really strong. But so is infectious disease, which unfortunately is really being neglected right now. So I think we can make investments across the board because we have excellent science. We've done really well as scientists. The expression we always say is we punch above our weight in terms of the amount of money we get in and yet what we produce. So I think there's a need to have that fundamental science funded, but then also the next stage that we've been talking about, take those things and commercialize them requires another level of funding and continuity.
Yeah, and a place for trainees, because we're growing talents, but there's not enough position in academia for all those PhDs, so they need to have good job in good industry as well.
Nuclear medicine, glycomics, these are all the platforms of the future, all the immunotherapy work that, there's a bunch, there's a dozen, we can give you those. But there needs to be a commitment to support these and a really robust program that's not going to take 2 years to get approval through the process of the regulatory requirements around it.
Otherwise, we'll just make Denmark a little bit richer, right? Yeah.
Let them get on with it.
They know what to do with it.
I do want to just add that, in the 1960s, it was Tillon McCullough who discovered the hematopoietic stem cells. And so we have a huge history of research excellence in stem cells regenerative medicine as well.
That's not the issue in Canada, and it never has been, right? So it's obvious by now, I think, that we lack an industrial policy for life sciences in Canada. So my question for all of you is, do we need one? And what would it look like, and where should it reside in government? I mean, would it be something that rolls up to industry or health? Finance, should it be its own department like AI and digital industries like Evan Solomon leads? I want to hear one or two ideas from each of you on what an industrial policy should look like, very prescriptive, if we were to have one wrapped around life sciences.
Well, yes, we need an industrial policy. We're, as I said before, the only G7 country that doesn't have one. Most countries have a 10 to 20-year policy because it's about the long term, and they have a policy with budgets to it, by the way. So let's not forget, because Canada doesn't like doing the budget part, right? So we have to have budgets with it. China has a 50-year industrial policy, and so we're not China, but just to see where they've gone from what to what today, because they have a path. They know they're climbing Everest, and we don't know which hill we're climbing. So we need an industrial policy, and into that policy has to feed everything. The RD&I needs to be a cornerstone of that, especially because we're all in a race for innovation, and innovation is what's going to bring wealth. So that policy needs to feed in. Your trade policy needs to feed into that. Your Talent policy needs to feed into that. Every aspect of what government manages needs to feed into your industrial policy. We all need to be aligned moving forward. Oh, and by the way, we then need to have an alignment with the provinces and the territories around that, because no point doing all this and you get to the province and they say, nope, we're not going to do it. So this is part of our problem, right? It's that fragmentation. We need to have a very aligned policy. Where should it sit? Well, I'm not sure which department in government, but clearly this should, for me, this should be the Prime Minister's, baby. This is what should be driving his agenda. Should we have had a diverse economy and not relied 74% or whatever of our trade with US? Yes, we should have done that 25 years ago. And we talked about it 25 years ago. Had we had an industrial policy 25 years ago, wow, maybe we'd be somewhere else. But it needs to happen that way.
John.
Yeah, I think Karima hit really all the high notes. I think we need a vision. We need to sit down and have a real vision. And the vision has to not just be the last step or just the first step. It's got to be the continuity of it. And we have to have a policy which supports all those different aspects of it, because we really need to build. We're at a point where we need to start. We haven't really started in all these years we've been doing it. We've had individuals, groups in the government which do their thing, which is great. But we need to have a unifying program. And I agree with you. But industry is more than just the factories at the end. It's the whole thing that needs to be included in that vision. And I think we need that in Canada to get going.
Ev.
Yes, same. I think it's like an orchestra. You need a good leader but we need all the instrument. We need to have everyone on board, from industrial, but also government, academia, and foster partnership. We're fighting for this small pie, so sometimes it's difficult to have this vision and this working together and have common vision. And I would say as well, clear governance and clear way of dealing with conflict of interest to ensure that a civil society will trust this industrial policy as well.
Good angle. Molly.
So I guess, just to add to what's being said versus repeat it, I would really like every department to think about our industrial policy and economic development. And if that means it's under the Prime Minister's mandate, or maybe every department has it as their mandate, I think that's when the company is going to pull as one, and all row together towards, so it's not your job, it's our job.
Fantastic. Thanks for the answers. So it's your turn, everyone. We've got some time for Q&A. We've got a microphone over there, and microphone ici. So if anyone wants to amble over, we'd love to hear your questions. And I'm going to just start pointing at people if nobody goes up. So beware. No question too silly or too profound. Where? Okay.
Only one, eh? Okay, thank
There
you
will be
so
more,
much.
guarantee it.
Really quickly, what would be your first 3 priorities to solve procurement?
Excellent question. Who wants to take that?
So procurement was one of the big things that came up again in our HWest report, which we did 7 years ago. We had said that government can be a major player in procurement. Again, if you look at what the US does, they are a major player of procurement of their own technologies that come out of there. And we were looking specifically at in the health bioscience side. So we were looking at the hospitals, that some of our best innovations come out, from Canada. We're the first and we're the last adopters. And an example I'll give you of that was the first coated stent for angioplasty was made in Vancouver by Angiotech. We were the 40th country to adopt it. If you wanted to have a stent replacement, you went down to Seattle to get it from Vancouver. Secondly, in COVID, more recently, Abcelera created the first antibody to treat severe cases of COVID, and we didn't use it. We nowhere in the country did we use it. Only in Vancouver as a favor. If they knew people who needed it, they took it to the hospital and gave it. And the guy said, I want this given to me. that they used it. So we are a very slow adopter. This is one of the challenges we identified as one of the threats to us, is Canada is a very slow adopter of innovation, where if you're not an innovation adopter, you're not an innovation nation.
So is that due though to the how the single payer system is constructed? And there's, because it always seems to be this drive to do things as cheaply as possible. I mean, is this somehow where a federal money rained down from the sky to fund innovative treatments that this would help? Ev, do you want to?
Well, I was just about to say that we're a federation, so there's the federal government, but then each provinces decide, and that adds a layer of complexity. And we're a small market as well, so it's a tough situation.
Yes, but if I can just say, the fact that your own country is using it is a validator for them to go into other markets. I've heard companies say, if just one hospital was using our product here, we could say something. If your own country isn't using it and Health Canada has approved it, it's not non-approved, it's approved by Health Canada, but we're not using it because it's going to cost more money. We haven't looked at value-based procurement. That's why we said, look at evidence-based, value-based procurement. It's not about these silos that, our budget is this, so this is adding something new to it. There's no incentive. Nobody's incentivized. In fact, you're punished if you do it.
I think we need to lock all the health ministers of the country in a room with Karima, and nobody comes out and with a one bat. John, did you want to add to that?
Well, I think, Canadians are smart people, but we don't use our brains sometimes. And there's lots of great examples around the world of how to do things, and we don't pay attention to that, and we're sort of stuck. We keep getting stuck, and our healthcare system is an example of that. Love Tommy Douglas, but he's been gone for a little while. Why don't we look around at other countries, how they do their health, they fund their healthcare system? Because I believe in public health, but I think there's better ways to do it, and there are examples out there. And despite the fact that the states are now in this incredible turmoil, they've done great things in science. They've had good policies to support biotech and so on. We could learn from those and adapt them here. To your point, we're not great at adapting these innovations.
Thanks. Over here.
Sorry. Oh, there we go. Hi, Andre Albanati. I'm on the board for CSPC. So hi, I do a lot of work in the health and life sciences space. I work with a number of small biotechs and scaling companies and so forth. So I guess one of the observations I would have, interested in a view on this, is so yes, there's the federal innovation ecosystem, the work that Karima and others have done in terms of life sciences strategies and so forth. But one of the things, and I helped out Moderna, so their plant in Quebec and so forth. And one of the observations I would have, and it's conversations I have with the biotech community, is that if there's a jurisdiction in Canada that gets it, it's Quebec, or they're closer than most of the other provinces. And I know from the conversations that tend to take place with the Ontario government, for example, which would be the other, Pill Hill, et cetera, and the work that's done with a number of these organizations in Ontario, it's that the Ontario government will look at them and go, and how many jobs are you going to create here? And that's their metric. But that's not like that. That's one part. That's one slice of the puzzle on these things, and they're missing an entire other conversation on the science, on how it scales and how you get it to market. So. Just a note in terms of that Quebec piece, that they've been more aggressive at courting. Another one of the companies I work with has actually relocated from France to Montreal. So, and that was before this budget. So we'll see, they're now scoping through the budget to see additionally how that will support some of the work they're doing. So that's happening in real time. But certainly at the provincial level, there's also more that should be done there in terms of how they think about innovation, because they're a ways behind, I would argue. So if you've got views on that.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. Any of you want to chime in on that? Then we'll go over to the next question.
Well, I would agree with that, actually. I think Quebec has been very progressive in terms of trying to encourage investment in their province, which has been great. They even had their own venture fund and so on. So I think that is true. Unfortunately, we can't necessarily access it, but maybe we should have, in other every province has it, or else we just do it as Canadians. I think that may be the easier thing to do.
I think, though, just probably everybody knows in this room, there's kind of different rules in Quebec than there are in the other provinces, and so I don't want to leave that unsaid. You know, so that's all I'll say.
Anyone else want to add to that? F?
Well, I'll speak about what I know, but in terms of innovation, for instance, the Quebec government keep aside 1% of the budget for vaccine program, public health vaccination program, for program evaluation, which means research, which means rethinking the schedule, saving doses, having different products. So it makes our public health program, which are not known to be innovative, innovate in the world. So that's a vision that we have. Yeah.
Okay, over here.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Liam Crapper, I'm a policy advisor at NSERC. Excuse me. Given that this is a CRCC-led session, and I've heard a number of times on this panel and throughout the conference about Canada's strengths in post-secondary research and talent development and those spaces, and then gaps as we get into commercialization, scale up, and things like that. Traditionally, the granting agencies have played more in the foundational research and applied research and talent development spaces. Is there more you're hoping to see from the granting agencies for support for these subsequent stages, or are you looking more to other actors to fill in those roles? And how do you see the roles of the various players in the space needing to change? Thanks.
That's a great question. Let's get some prescriptions. Who wants to start?
Well, I don't think personally, and I see Paul standing over there, but I don't think the CHR should be involved in doing this. I think they're doing great at the stuff they do. We need more of it. But I think this other part that we need to have, there should be other departments, like I said, for instance, which I think they are getting involved because that is more their bailiwick, I would say. And I don't think NSERC should necessarily, do this sort of translational stuff to the degree it needs to be done. Research-based translation, I think, is important for them. But I think it's probably better off to bring in industrial thinking to this problem.
But John, we need alignment between all of them, right? Like there needs to be alignment. They need to really talk, really be aligned. And I think if that was there and we had, so if you look at any other country, you have programs that are early stage and mid stage and late stage, and that's how they are. But there's an alignment and an overarching agency, which I said, I guess, is looking at that and reviewing.
Just to pull on an example from the US, and it's just the other system that I know the best, they have a small business innovation research fund, right? And so because there is a gap, I'm sure, John, you've experienced it, I've experienced it, where you've got this great research, but it's not ready for prime time. It's not ready to start a company, but it is translation, and it's on that road. And so, we do have IRAP, and we do have the shreds, but all of them, the shreds, you get rewarded afterwards, after you spend the money, not before. I think we need incentives to spend the money versus rewards afterwards. And I think, yeah, as you said, maybe not NSERC, maybe not CIHR, maybe not SHRC, but something that next step, so that you are ready for prime time to come out of, the cocoon of the university with strength.
Well, and we have a program modeled after SBIR. It's called Innovative Solutions Canada. It was sent out to the departments who didn't spend any of the money. I mean, defense, I think, was supposed to spend $65 million a year. I don't think they've spent in the 5 or 6 years, it's more than that, probably about 7 or 8 years that program has existed. We have a program exactly like SBIR, which is a legendary program in the United States that countries around the world have tried to emulate.
And similarly, when we had Infrastructure Bank, the infrastructure was supposed to be for not only bricks and mortars, it was supposed to be for innovation infrastructure and digital infrastructure. We didn't use that either. So something goes wrong maybe in the communication, or letting people know that they can apply for it, or the applications are really difficult. So we need to look into that. I think you have somebody else.
Yeah, Dr. Hébert.
Hi, thank you. This is outstanding. I think the messages most of us are getting is collaboration for impact, which is our mantra right now amongst the Tri-Agency and CFI. You're going to hear an awful lot more about it. I can't speak for Sylvain, but Sylvain is going through a modernization of his programming, and he's giving that a lot of thought about how to align. At CIHR and NSERC and at the tri-agency space, we are looking to see how we can drive impact, both social, health, and commercial impact. I agree with John, though, we are not commercialization engines per se. You know, we're discovery engines. On the other hand, if all of this, you've said it more than once, all of you, if we don't drive impact, and commercialization is one of those things, we are failing with our money. So somewhere, somehow, we have to essentially put a value chain together that makes sense and really go, well, the pipeline, a value chain, call it from discovery to impact. And the impact portion in this conversation is, you know, wealth and jobs. They're not quite the same. So wealth, prosperity, and, you know, and economic drivers. And you're all highlighting the fact that there are portions of the chain that have gaps and there are some that are strong. I forgot to say that we have the best scientists in the world, and thank you for saying it over and over and over again. That's not really the issue. They're woefully underfunded, and thank you all for keep saying it. I would also suggest to you that we have to be careful. The recent two last budgets have highlighted and promoted science in a huge way, and it's a start. The one thing I would say to all of you, and let's just be careful in the room, who is our competition in all of this, right? When I'm starting to talk to these sectors, all of them, whether it's, you know, Innovative Medicine Canada, Biotech Canada, you name it, the one thing you have to keep in mind is your competition's not that guy around the street. In our case, you know who it is? It's the mining industry. And actually, what we are often engaged in the life sciences and in academia is called zero-sum competition. Michael Porter's work, right? What we need to be based and do is what we call value-based competition. In other words, Karima said it over and over and over again. Align, 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 collaborate, align, align, align. That's exactly what we have to do. And keep in mind that our competition is pipelines, it's energy corridors, it's defense. Defense actually is a collaborator, sorry, that's actually not a competitor. But if you think that way, then we don't fight for each of the part of that chain. Because right now, we're in a situation where all we think of is our side of the fence. So I would tell anybody working, if you want to work with government, I'm not really government, but we have to advocate as a common voice and a group. And to start saying to and that, you know, we do this with the provinces, they shouldn't be, it's not about Vancouver, it's not about Quebec, not about Toronto, it's about alignment across the ecosystem completely. So it's one message, I would say. We have to be thankful for the government for its direction currently. Job number one. If Mélanie Joly does not feel we've said something nice, we are not going to get more money. And that's job number one. Be thankful. $1.7 billion, a lot of money. And then, you know, and that comes across on the other, you know, $2.5 billion from the year before. So that's the first thing. The second thing, we need billions more. There's no question. No one's addressed the real big issue too, and I would just say, for me, it's all about data, actually, turns out. Yep. So everything we do is about data these days. Data, data, data. You generate data all the way through, and everything we do, I described in my vision, there are two things that will make us fail. It's not having a really good handle on data, whether it's genomic data, whether it's clinical data, whether it's, because the data piece will allow everything else to happen. Right? That's so fragmented too, so we need to sort that out. That will help everything. And then the commercialization strategies and getting stuff to market would be two things I would suggest, starting with collaboration across the ecosystem. We can talk about why it's not working, but that would be job number one.
Those are excellent points. I would add one thing to that as well, and that's Bay Street's frankly a problem because there aren't that many investors who understand life sciences, and those companies that have tried to dual list in Toronto and New York or NASDAQ have kind of given up. Zymeworks was an example. There was a bunch in the last 10 years that tried to dual list. the investors kind of understand gold. They understand rocks and they stuff oil. What's that?
We're too risky for them. I don't understand it, but big institutional investors don't see it.
But you know
Our
who,
banks are banks. They don't take any risks. There's no venture.
but you know why? But you know why? One of the reasons why Vancouver was successful was because digging for gold, digging in the ground, and digging for a biotech success was kind of similar. And some of the pioneering investors in the digging space and the mining space got that. There's a fellow named Ray McLean who saved QLT with $1 million over one weekend. I think that turned into a $100 million fortune. And that's kind of one of the reasons why BC became such a stronghold for biotech investing, because they understood it's a long shot when you put a shovel in the ground. It's a long shot when you start testing drugs. Does anyone want to address those points before we move to the next question?
No, I think they are absolutely on the button, and you're absolutely right. And your point about we're not competing with each other and stop competing with each other, because actually the sum of the total is greater than each of us alone. It really is. You look at people who collaborate, and that's why some of these networks like BioCanRx, Glycoin, have been so successful in helping, because they make people connect and work. They force them to work together. So please, let's get on that bandwagon straight away with everything that we do.
Thanks. Over here.
Yeah, thank you. Alicia Main, I'm at AVP Innovation at Simon Fraser University. Really enjoying the discussion. I wanted to draw a thread through to some of the other panels that have happened in that spirit of collaboration, specifically around innovation governance and the early stage gaps that I heard echoed here. And specifically the point, 2 points. One is about the SBIR and the Innovation Solutions Canada equivalency here. It was pointed out in a panel that we were on in innovation governance that the actual magnitude of the fund is so much smaller and the number of calls that are made up are so much smaller than they are in the SBIR program in the US, that you don't have the same effect of having those different types of staging, of de-risking, and of giving those early incentives that were that Dr. Soichet pointed out earlier. So we need something else for Canada to fit in that gap, and that was discussed extensively earlier on in 2 sessions. But my question for the panel is, hearing what we're hearing about collaboration and about the importance, Sean, as you brought out about the risk and uncertainty, investors being willing to deal with risk and uncertainty, also our entrepreneurs and our scientists being willing to deal with risk and uncertainty. Where are there opportunities to collaborate between CIHR, SSHRC, and NSERC on that sort of space around managing under uncertainty, or on other opportunities where we could try to have the fundamental research to innovation ecosystem work more smoothly?
I don't have an answer to your question, but I'll tell you that because I'm a professor, so I have the privilege of working with really bright minds every day. And our young scientists, engineers are very excited about entrepreneurism or entrepreneurialism. And same with my postdocs. I recruited a couple postdocs and kept a couple postdocs in the lab longer because of this promise of doing something entrepreneurial. So they're not afraid. They're excited at that opportunity and of making a difference. So that doesn't answer your question. But I do think, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there have been great examples in Canada of the Tri-Council working together to do important things. One was the Networks of Centers of Excellence, which unfortunately was terminated, I think, way too prematurely. But that was an example, and BioCanRx was originally funded by that. And as the founder and scientific director, it brought to me a whole new vision of what could be done, and we changed that BioCanRx program so it did address issues like Yves involved with as well in the cancer space, as well as fundamental biology, as well as industrial translation. So I think if we can get people to work together, which is Karima's vision all along, and support each other, then the risk goes way down and you actually start to do a lot more important things. So it's a great point. I think you can de-risk by working together and collaborating. And I think the tri-councils have a way to be leadership in that role here in Canada, but they need more than just that. They need to have the next level of support as well.
Yeah, because I believe our system in academia is not geared toward collaboration. We're geared toward individual success and university competition, and we need more incentive to, I guess, decrease that vision of the first to be patented something or the.
I would disagree with that. At least my entire career, so it's like 30 years now, has been rooted in collaboration. And so, I'm a part of many different multidisciplinary networks. I have like probably 25 collaborations with scientists, engineers, clinicians all over the world. So I don't think that's true, at least my own lived experience.
Well, I do too as well collaborate with, but at the end of the day, when I need to report back to my university, they count only the beans that I've produced that counts within their own. So there's a lot of things that are not valued that I'm doing.
Karima, you want to?
Yeah, just quickly for Alicia, I think the councils have started to work together and to collaborate. And one example I can give you is I last year chaired the Strategic Review Committee and the 5 hubs that were set up and all of that, where we had put another sort of a layer of strategic potential impact of these, these funds in these hubs. And it was, CFI, CHR, and SHRC were together on doing that. And for the first time, we had, the social sciences component included in it as well. I thought it was really great. So, it is doable and there should be more of that, but, they have started to do that.
We have time for a last question here.
Thank you so much. What a rich panel. My name is Ariane Morelli, and I'm a researcher at McGill University. My lab has done a lot of work in digital innovation. There's a lot, you are all largely from academic institutions. There's a lot of variation across universities, just building on that last question about how to actually help researchers take their products to market. And I just wondered if each of you could comment from the point of view of your own academic institutions, what processes have been put in place to actually help bridge that first and very difficult step between the research and the commercialization piece.
Maybe I'll start. So first of all, both CIHR and NSERC, those I don't know much about SHRC because I haven't had funding from them, but they do have these commercialization grants that you can get, and they're kind of like on your way to commercializing something. So you're not, commercialization is commerce, right? Like you're making a product, you're selling it. And that's not the mandate of the academic institution. But that doesn't mean we can't be part of that process. Anyway, so, my own lab, we've got a commercialization grant from CIHR, for example, for a novel enzyme that we discovered, and it's fantastic because it allows us to de-risk it. And at the University of Toronto, where I spent my career, there's a number of different organizations where the graduate students or the faculty can go for training and learning. There's boot camps, there's month-long camps. There's a lot of, some are funded, there's a lab to market program. There's lots of different programs that are available to help us. So that's in the academic institution. And then there's this big divide in terms of private sector. I don't know, Joan, if you wanted to add.
There's a big divide.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't have an answer for your question. I think every university is going to be a little bit different. My university, University of Ottawa and the Ottawa Hospital, who've supported my career, I think the best thing they did for me is they didn't fire me when they probably should have, because I was actually trying to commercialize things and it was hard, and so they were very patient with us. But we probably do need more sophisticated programs to translate, to allow people to translate their discoveries.
John, not the UILOs and tech transfer offices help enable that?
Tech transfer offices, which I think are woefully underfunded almost across the country, do the best that they can do, but it's challenging. I think some do better. I don't know what U of T's like, but I think Queen's had a pretty good program for a while, but it's tough when there's no investment in the technology transfer.
I think at UBC and SFU, there's a real push at the tech transfer offices to do stuff, and I'm sure Alicia can talk to that. She's the big boss on innovation there. But at SFU, but that there needs to be that to help at the university, because at that stage, you need support from there.
Well, folks, we're out of time. I was going to ask everyone to summarize a little bit, but I think I'd be better. Hopefully, this has been a very stimulating discussion for all of you. You all take away your own thoughts about where this could lead us. So thank you very much. This has been a great panel. Thanks to all of you for listening and participating. So I've got some housekeeping notes here. I'm noting the annual opportunity for conference delegates to engage with CRCC, so do that. Please do visit the CRCC website for the latest details on the work of the committee. And thanks to everyone. See you next year. Let's drop some mics.
Sorry, we are not done yet. Just one more minute. Thank you for your patience. First, I want to thank the panelists, CRCC, for this excellent conversation. And shamelessly, if I may, on the magazine, because there were a lot of discussions about alignment, I have a piece on alignment of innovation and sovereignty in the magazine. Please read that. So thank you, CRCC, for continued support for CSPC. I appreciate that, and we are very grateful for the content and that you bring to the conference, and to CIHR as well, Dr. Pulver. Yeah, and first I want to make sure that you know that next year's conference is in Chateau Laurier, November 25th to 27th. So please arrange your board meetings in Ottawa. Other events, if you have on that week, Monday, Tuesday, not Wednesday to Friday, because that's the CSPC, when CSPC takes place. I want to thank all the people who were helping all the year to make sure this conference is happening, and is happening with good quality. First, CSPC volunteers, around 100 volunteers who help with the operation of the center, and most of them working to organize this conference. Can we have a round of applause for them? Thank you. Then I want to thank CSPC staff, again, worked tirelessly to make sure everyone is happy with this conference. CSPC board members, their strategic insights, advice, and directions for the conference. Also want to thank all panel organizers and panelists. We send a lot of emails. We do work very hard with panel organizers, and they work very hard to make sure their panels are good quality. So sometimes we send too many emails to them, and just to make sure everything is fine, they work really hard. I guess they deserve a round of applause too. Thank you. Last, but certainly not the least, actually I have two more. Our event planning team, King Events, who work really hard, and they're fabulous event planning team. Al and Courtney, I guess, are over there. If you want to organize an event flawlessly, go to them. Not for those events on the week of CSPC, but because they will be busy with us. But if you have other events throughout the year, please go to them. Last but not the least, the partners of the conference. I want to thank them once again. Without them, this would not have been possible, would not have happened. I want to thank the existing partners. I want to thank the future partners. We're very much looking forward to your support and working with you, and make sure we continue this beating heart of the science and innovation policy dialogue in Canada. Merci beaucoup.